Hey,
Hello.
Blossom.
How's it going, David?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. It's a pretty nice day outside. I just went outside for a walk.
Nice.
So, I have some guesses
Yeah.
that what you want to talk about.
Um, yeah, I was thinking basically, peppers and then also kind of like hot sauce and that, then ties into like fermenting and there's a whole bunch of fermenting related stuff that I'm interested in. And so there's a whole, all that's kind of connected in a way.
It's a whole cornucopia of hot
Exactly.
things and fermented things. Is that pepper plants I see in the back, or I'm just overreaching now?
No, no, they're not. It's a couple of my little plants from the office, and then added a tree during quarantine. So
I really
no.
like that. I've had a fairly big, it's not a tree, but it's a pretty big bush kind of plant.
Mhm.
The ones with the really broad leaves. I've had it for about
Oh
a
yeah,
year. And it's just a life changer, in terms of providing some soothing green color to look at and around the house.
yeah. It's the you like. I feel like once I added all the plants to my room, it was like, oh, this is a lot nicer now. Yeah. No, unfortunately, with pepper plants, I actually looked into it because I have a little like outside this window here that's
Uh-huh.
making me all backlit and you can barely see me. There's a like a wooden kind of it's one of those like classic San Francisco windows that opens up to like in between buildings, right?
Ah,
And
right.
but there's like a little wooden kind of like bench planter thing that my landlord put in right before we moved in, and I was like, there's a spot where you can hook up a hose, and I was like, oh, I should grow peppers out there.
Yeah.
But the problem is peppers, they don't want it to like basically from the time you plant them, it can't really ever drop below 50 degrees or they'll die. Um,
Really, there's no native California peppers that
I
can put
mean,
up.
so there are, and in places like in the South Bay or like parts of the East Bay, like you could plant them now, harvest them in like August, September, and you'd be fine because it like
I see. I see.
right, like you just need like a 3 month-ish window and you're good. But like
Okay.
in the city, that's it was like 55 when I woke up this morning, right? Like it's
I guess in the city there's just one window and it's year round.
yeah.
It's just the same temperature always.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you, if you don't grow them, David, how do you source your peppers?
So I have a couple times I've bought peppers from like local grocery stores. The selection is like pretty limited from your kind of normal like
Right.
Safeway, like Gus's, those type of things. Like you'll find, like jalapenos always,
Of
habaneros
course.
like most of the time. Sometimes you'll find like Fresno peppers, which are kind of the bigger, longer red ones. They're maybe like 5 or 6 inches long. And
Okay.
that's kind of it. Like maybe like really rarely, there will be you'll go and you'll be like, oh, there's like like the little bird's eye chilies or like things like that. But it's like for the most part, like if that's what you want, like those are there. The grocery stores over in the Mission will have a
Hmm.
better variety. I know Drew actually he got a bunch of like red jalapenos because I've been looking for like specifically red jalapenos
Oh.
for a long time. And he sent me a Facebook message one day and he was like, I'm at a grocery store in the Mission. Like this is what they have. Do you want them? And I was like, yes, I do. Um, so like there's like some more variety over there. I've bought peppers online a couple times.
Okay. You say
The
that with some trepidation.
Yeah, well, so it's kind of weird because like all as you can imagine, the people that are like growing peppers for a living are usually not the most like tech savvy
Sure.
people, and so it's like you go to these websites and the website like barely works, right? And then you're like sure, I'll take a pound of this pepper, and then it comes in like a USPS like flat rate box of just like basically just peppers in the box. Like there's no bag or anything. Like you open it up and then there's just peppers, and you're like, okay, cool. So I bought like, and some of those guys grow like really exotic peppers.
What do
There's
you mean by exotic? Like they're from other places in the world, or?
Yeah, from other places in the world, or they're growing what people call the super hots, which is like a whole class of pepper. But then there's also things like so like the habanero, for example. Like everyone, the one that you always see in the grocery stores and that like everyone knows of is the kind of like wrinkly orange one, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the standard one.
Yep.
And then there's a red one, which is like also fairly common. Comes like originally came from the Caribbean. It's called a red Savina. It's like one of the few ones that actually has its own name. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's like those are more common, and they're a little bit hotter, but then they're also like fruitier and a little smokier, and they like taste great. My dad actually grew a bunch of those and then gave them to me, and he was like, "Make hot sauce."
Oh wow!
So that's
Like you,
that's the third
like you are now well known amongst all of your friends that like you're the pepper person. Like people when they see peppers will think of you, message you, ask you to make
Yeah.
hot sauce.
Yeah. Yes, that was that's the third method of getting peppers is you like have a family member who grows them. These like pepper sellers, right? So they'll have those ones, and they'll have like these more common ones are like they're at least common enough that my dad was able to find seeds somewhere and grow them. But then there are also like what are called chocolate habaneros, or sometimes they're called habaneros negro.
Okay.
And they're not actually black, they're like a dark brown color.
Okay.
Like that shade of brown that's like almost verging on purple, if you know what I mean. Like it's kind of like a
Yeah, no, I
like
kind
a
of know
really
what you mean.
earthy.
Yeah.
So there's like they'll sell those or like white habaneros, and they're actually like a like not like paper white, but like they're like white with maybe a tinge of yellow. And so it's stuff like that where it's just like like these are some weird stuff, and then just other things that it's like you've like peppers that you like have never heard of, then you go and Google it and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, I'm glad someone grown this in their greenhouse because now I can buy them.
So, me personally, as a layman and like a regular user of peppers, I only know about bell peppers mostly in terms of colors, right? And what I associate is like red is sweeter. It's not really sweet, but you know what I mean. And green is kind of like more peppery. Does that hold across other peppers? That spectrum?
Yeah, for the most part, it does. If you like think about jalapenos, for example, for jalapenos, there's like green jalapenos and red jalapenos, and those one are actually like it's the same plant. It's just a matter of when you harvest it.
Sure.
Which is also I think for all colors of bell peppers, it's the same thing. It's the same plant, just of like when you harvest it. And then it gets a little bit sweeter. The red jalapenos get a little bit hotter, but also like more flavorful with it. For the habaneros, because it's not just one plant, it's actually like different. I don't know if cultivars is the right plant botany term, but like it's actually like a different. You're not gonna like leave a habanero on and it'll go from like white to orange to red to whatever. Like,
okay.
Separate plants, but I've never had the white ones or the chocolate ones. But what I've heard is the white ones are way less hot, but like a much more pungent flavor.
Okay.
The red ones are like they have more of that fruity, sweet, like a little bit of smoky almost too than the orange ones. So I think in general, it does kind of apply across peppers. I'm sure there are some that are like, it's completely backwards and it's like, nope, the yellow ones are, the yellow ones are going to ruin your day and the red ones are like nice and great. But like, as far as I can tell, like that does broadly apply.
I mean, there's always an exception that proves the rule, but overall, it does sound like it applies. So yeah, I guess let's take a step back.
Okay.
There was obviously a time in your life when you're not the pepper guy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not gonna say you're the pepper guy, but in your circles, everybody thinks of you as the pepper guy. What happened? What happened along the way, David? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the earliest thing I can remember associated with spicy food was I remember being at home and my parents had a jar of olives that were stuffed with habanero. And I remember eating one of those and just being so miserable. And like I just remember like being in the bathroom, like head under the faucet, like just like flowing water, like, come on, this is terrible. Like I don't know, I liked spicy, like I kind of always liked spicy food, but like wasn't the pepper guy. Um, in college, I bought a hot sauce from, there's a company called Dave's Insanity is the like name of it. And despite like there's a whole bunch of different Dave's Insanity sauces, and they range from being like very pleasant and good to like being that kind of like, this is pretty miserable, like to the point where it's not like food anymore. It's just hot for the sake of being hot. And I bought one of those really hot ones just because I was like, oh, let's try it. And so then like, and then it was like, oh, he's the guy that has that bottle of super hot sauce. Like, you got to try it because it's, it's a like almost like a, shared misery thing, right? You find out your one friend hasn't had the like insane plus sauce yet, and you're like, oh, you got to try it. Like,
I believe I've done that with you once as well. Dip the end of a chip into something really nuclear and just being miserable for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's I don't know, there's something about it, right? Where you're like, it's the same thing with like if you're clearing out your fridge, and then you like come across something like real gross, and you're like, oh, you got to smell this. Like,
morbid curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. But then like, I don't know, I feel like that was probably kind of closer to the start of my like, I don't know, like fascination or obsession or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right? Of like really spicy things and
interest. Less loaded word, interest.
Yeah, there you go. That's better way to put it. But like, and then that I think also, later in college was probably when I started like buying a bunch of hot sauces just like to try all the different flavors and things, because they're the spectrum that different companies make is so crazy between there's things that are like really like sweet and fruity with like a little bit of heat to things that are like really like rich and smoky and like so like to just kind of amass like a small little collection to be able to try. And then also for like no matter what food you have, right, you're like, oh, I have a hot sauce that go great with this, and you can match it to it. So like I think that was kind of like the next step. And then after like graduating and started living here in the city, I remember the way I started making hot sauce was I found a YouTube video. It was like in your like my recommended or whatever.
Of course, it
probably because I've been watching hot ones.
Yeah.
And it was like how to make your own hot sauce at home, and it was like a 10-minute video, and I was like, okay, like that's not that much of my time. I'll give it a shot, try watching it. And it was someone who was making just a simple like fermented pepper sauce, and it was like the amount of like work is pretty minimal because you basically like more or less it's put it in a jar and leave it and make sure your jar doesn't explode. And like that I was like, all right, I'll give this a shot. And so then like from there then was like I made that, like shared it with friends, brought it into work, probably made you try it, like
I think I do remember trying that.
Yeah. And then like then from then on experimenting with different peppers, like what else can you, different combinations of onion and garlic and spices and whatever in there, ways afterwards or after you fermented it, how can you blend it with different vinegars to try and change the flavor profile and maybe bring the heat down a little bit, and stuff like that. And so I think like that was kind of the progression. I think I started being the pepper guy when I was bringing in homemade hot sauce and being like, wants to try my homemade hot sauce.
I think it's that point that people start gifting you peppers and gifting you hot sauce and asking your opinions on everything.
Right. Yeah. Because before that, like I was about to say everyone. Not everyone likes spicy food, but like a lot of like tons of people like spicy food, right?
Yes. Yes. Most people, I would say, like spicy food. Yeah. And in fact, most people also have that kind of morbid curiosity where I'm not going to eat this hot sauce regularly, but let me see how hot it could be. Like, I'm sure those people on YouTube are pretending it's not that crazy.
Yeah. And, I haven't had some of the like, the hottest hot sauces in the world. I think at this point I've done enough of those ones that are like so hot and like, like that I'm like, I know how much it hurts. Like it's really hot. I don't need to do
is it a sauce is it a sauce at that point? It's like concentrate, right? At that
It's
point, it's like capsaicin concentrate and whatever.
Yeah, and that was the hot sauce the it's called the Last Dab that
Oh
Hot
yes.
Ones makes. That's what's kind of so impressive about that one is that they don't use any concentrate or anything. That
Mm,
one's like it's all like natural ingredients, no like isolates or anything crazy like
okay.
that. And it's like not the hottest hot sauce I've had, but it's still hot enough that I'm like I'm not gonna put this on food. Like
I mean, both of us as longtime viewers of Hot Ones know that the bomb is really the worst one.
Yeah, and I should have done my homework before this and looked up what pepper was in it, but there are some hot sauces get it, but like some peppers, especially once you start getting into like the super hot region, where like
Mhm.
they're really hot, but then they also just like have almost like a chemical like taste to it. You start to lose the um, there's a lot of peppers in that kind of similar heat range as habaneros that have like really interesting flavors and whether it's
Mhm.
fruity or smoky or floral or whatever, right? And
Mhm.
then you start some of those ones that are 4 times hotter than a habanero are like, oh no, this one like, this is chemicals like you've
I mean, it should taste good. Like the point of sauce in my book is to accompany something and make it taste better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's
Mm.
other than when you're doing it as a challenge, like yeah,
Right, right.
it should be adding something.
What do you regularly eat your homemade hot sauce with? Is it only for challenges, or do you actually like consume it?
No, so I consume it. The only one that I made that is like came out as a challenge sauce was one that I made with. I bought some. They're called Trinidad Moruga scorpion peppers.
Oh,
Um,
you with scorpion in the name, you know
yeah,
it's gonna be very pleasant, very light. It's not gonna be.
yeah. And so that one, like that one is that one's too hot. Like it's that like it's and it's super deceiving because you like put it on something, you try it, and it's like the first 30 seconds you're like, ooh, this is like really good, it has this nice flavor, and then after 30 seconds you're like, oh no, no, here it is. Like this is so that one I don't really eat, but
Okay.
I made probably my favorite one that I've made was with habaneros and pineapple and some like sweet onion.
Ooh.
And so that one on like on burritos, like an al pastor burrito, and it's like a level of hot where you can basically like as you're biting down your burrito, you can like each time you flatten out your burrito, you can put another line of hot sauce on it, and like take 2 or 3 more bites, and another line of hot sauce, and like it's hot, but it's still like really tasty. Um,
That makes sense. I mean, I do that with sriracha.
yeah, yeah. I have another one that it's made with a pepper that's called like a fatali, which is like one of those ones that I was mentioning. It's just like weird and you've never heard of it. And then I was like,
Right.
why not? But I made kind of like a Tabasco style, like more vinegary, like really thin sauce with that one. And that one's good on like eggs or like put it on pizza and stuff like that. And it's got almost like a touch smoky almost, which I'm assuming came from the pepper because it like was basically just peppers, onions, garlic, and I think like a little bit of like agave syrup was what went into it.
Okay.
But like that one's like good on like similar things to what you put Tabasco on. It's maybe a little less vinegary, but like things like that. So I do try to use them, and like the goal is to like be able to use them.
You mentioned super hot sauces, right? Is that a technical term? Like there's a threshold of Scoville units, right? That's what
Yeah, Scoville unit.
spiciness is measured in?
Yeah, so I don't know. It's like the I don't know what like when a pepper crosses from being hot to being super hot. I do know like when you hear of like the Carolina Reaper or like the Ghost Pepper
Right.
or
I've heard of
the
those.
Trinidad scorpions, right? Or Pepper X, which is like the one that hot ones use.
Oh, that's a thing?
Last dab. Yeah, yeah. Pepper X is weird. We can talk about that in a sec, but like those are all like 1.5 million Scoville units and above.
Oh wow.
And so like those are definitely super hots.
Okay.
I don't know where that line is. And like in comparison, like a habanero will like the red Savina habaneros will peak at like 500,000,
Okay.
which is like,
That's my, yeah.
I can't imagine just biting into a habanero. Like that sounds like a bad time to me. So like when you're like 3xing that, like I'm good. I don't need to put that into my mouth like unadulterated, right? Like that's
Also, when you're eating just the pepper, right? Like there's a lot of the oil in the skins that's gonna just
Mhm.
coat your whole mouth. It's not just gonna be like a little sauce. I eat it, it's gone. It's much
Yeah.
worse experience eating the raw pepper, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like I think like eating just like the plain pepper, like I think is, like you said, it's just objectively worse than putting it in something. Like last night for dinner, we had a thing that had, it was like corn with some chopped up jalapeno and onion and, stuff in it, and like was delicious, like not super spicy, but
Mhm.
like I definitely don't want to just take a bite out of a habanero or of a jalapeno, right? Like even that, I'm like, that doesn't sound like it's still going to be hot, and I don't want to do it.
No, that does not sound like a good time. In fact, I'm from Pakistan, and one of the things that we do is we just straight up eat small green chili peppers
Mhm.
with food, because our local chili peppers are fairly benign. They're not
Yeah.
that hot. So I did that the first time I came here with green chilies, and that was not a good time. Like it's the same chili. It looks like the same chili, but it's way hotter.
Yeah, I did a similar thing when I was in India, and like it was
Okay.
you got your food, and when you sat at the table, there was like a little thing of like little peppers and
Yeah.
like a little vinegary thing, and it was like but also you like you eat the pepper, you have some food, like you're not just eating the pepper and then sitting there and like, all right, you don't get water for 10 minutes, we'll put your picture on the wall, right? Like it's
How was your trip to India in terms of spicy food? Did you get to experiment a lot?
Not as much as I wanted. I think I kept trying to get really spicy food, and I think everyone like looked at me and then was like, "No, we're not gonna do this." There was one there was one place that I went, and they like I can't even remember what the dish was anymore, but they were like, "Oh, we made this bowl specifically for you." To like
Oh, wow.
make it like as spicy as we would have it, and like the first bite I just bit into like a pepper that was like in the broth. Like, oh yeah, like I've probably wasn't supposed to eat just the pepper, but like it was like, yep, this is this has got me.
Were you able to finish the meal?
Yeah, I think I was
Oh.
I just paid more attention to like if I was gonna have a bite of pepper in my thing, also that there was some other food in there with it.
Let's go a little bit into fermentation. So
Okay.
I personally did not know that you need to ferment hot sauce. I thought that was a whole other thing. How are they related?
So there are two like big kind of groups of hot sauces. There's like cooked hot sauces and then fermented hot sauces. So things like a Tapatio or a Cholula and things like that. Like those are cooked hot sauces where you're making peppers and probably vinegar and like whatever else, and you're simmering it down, and then like that's how you're creating it. For fermented hot sauces, and like kind of the biggest example of fermented hot sauce is Tabasco.
Okay.
You're either making a pepper mash where you're like pureeing peppers and adding in salt, or doing either whole peppers, or like what I like to do is usually slice them in half, because then you don't have to worry about air bubbles and stuff like that. And making a like
Because of the explosions.
well, no, so the explosions come from air bubbles is just keep things submerged.
I see.
But then you're putting that in a saltwater brine where it's like 3.5% salt by weight is what you shoot for, and that's you have the salt in there to basically keep the bad bacteria from growing. Namely, like botulism is kind of that's the real big bad one there.
So you could, this whole time when I was trying those hot sauces, there's like a slight non-trivial chance I could get botulism.
No, so what happens is so botulism doesn't like salt, right? So
Okay.
the amount of salt in there isn't enough that it like won't grow, period, but it like definitely discourages it.
Okay.
It also doesn't like, I mean, some other things it doesn't like are sugar and oxygen, which
Okay.
when you're fermenting it, you don't have either of those. And it doesn't like acid. And so what
Gotcha.
the bacteria that you do want to grow is, it's some, I'm sure, a like some sort of scientist who studies this stuff is like would say I'm wrong, but it's like lactobacillus is the like family of bacteria that ferments it. It's actually similar
Okay.
to some sour beers, and it like is basically a just like naturally occurring yeast that's everywhere. But
Okay.
it produces lactic acid, and below like 4.6 pH, botulism won't like the spores won't reproduce. And so
Gotcha.
I have like food grade pH strips that you can test, and basically like it, assuming it gets down that low, like that yeast has outcompeted everything,
Okay. Okay.
and you're good. And usually like I've only had one thing that didn't ferment down that low, which was I tried to do wasn't actually hot sauce, but I was trying to like make some fermented garlic honey, and it like
What even is that? I've never heard of that.
so basically like I took like 3 heads of garlic,
Okay.
and peeled all the cloves and
Mm-hmm.
put them into a jar with honey. And so then the honey like draws the water out of the garlic, and so like it thins up a little bit, and then it ferments, and so you have this kind of like funky garlicky sweet thing that is supposed to be great in like salad dressings, or I was going to use it like bake pizza and like brush it on the crust. Right, was kind
Oh,
of my
that sounds
thinking.
great.
But it didn't ferment down low enough, and then I was kind of like, I don't know. And then I started Googling, and like half the people on forums and things were like, people have been doing this for thousands of years. Like, why are you worried? And the other half the people were like, well, like botulism spores have been known to be found in honey, and they've known to be found in garlic. So it sounds like you just cultivated a shitload of botulism. And of course, at this point, I've already tried it. So I've I've already had a little spoonful of it, and I'm like, okay, well, either I'm gonna die or I'm fine.
Oh, it's fatal. It's fatal.
Well, so botulism, if you get treated like early on, it's still some horrible survival rate, right? It's like worse than COVID. Like 10% of people die or something like that.
Did you get a good scare from that?
Oh yeah, I was like anxious for like you Google symptoms, and it's like, okay, like if you have a really high dose, like 8 hours, but like low doses can take up to 5 days to show any symptoms. And I was just like, shit. And then you like look, like the first symptoms are like droopy eyelids. So like every morning and every night I'm like in the mirror and I'm like, are my eyelids droopy? Is this what they look like normally? Like, what does my face look like? I don't even know. So I did dump that out. But like peppers and everything, like everything I've had like will ferment so aggressively that so like I do it all in just like mason jars with a loose lid. And so that way, because it produces CO2, and the CO2 needs somewhere to go, and it also pushes out the oxygen, because oxygen like molds like oxygen. So that's how you're keeping basically just like peppers and water from molding for like 2 weeks. So that works. If it's too full, like basically like the air bubbles will get caught, and just the whole mass of stuff kind of expands, and if you have the lid on loose, it can just kind of like overflow, and it's a mess and whatever. So in that case, I'll do it with the lid sealed, and like twice a day or more, you want to kind of like give it a little shake, dislodge air bubbles so it's all at the top, and then it's called burping it, and like to let the CO2 out. But like like the pineapple habanero one I made, like that one, because there's so much sugar in the pineapple that like it went crazy. It was just like fermenting so aggressively, and I was like spilling like hot sticky pineapple habanero like liquid all over. I like put it in like a Tupperware thing to just like catch the overflow, but it's just like there's only so much you can do, and you're like, all right, like it's It's overflowing.
I know one thing that winemakers do is put balloons on top of whatever container they have, so it just catches the CO2, and then you kind of just like pop it every now and then.
Yeah, and you can get like one-way airlocks basically,
Oh,
where
sure.
things like that. That like I'll probably invest in that eventually. So far this has
I
been
was gonna
good enough.
say, like, what paraphernalia do you have for all of this hot sauce making? Are you deep into it?
I don't think I'm not the deepest into it. I have
Compared to whom? Like Chili Klaus or
uh,
somebody?
I mean, just compared to like if you go on Reddit and you like go to like people
Oh,
that are
right.
like, talking about fermenting stuff, you're like, you guys are crazy.
What's the subreddit?
I think there's just like either fermenting or fermentation, and there's also like a hot sauce subreddit, and none of them are very active. But like if you find stuff, like Google that links to it, like there'll be big threads every once in a while where people are talking about things. But I have a ton of just like a ton of jars. I have so many jars, which like works because then like I use them for a sourdough starter, which is another fermentation, and just drinking out of and stuff. I have 2 small wooden barrels. Which after I tell you my list of stuff, I can tell you about when I tried to use the barrels because I haven't successfully done it yet. I have it's like not quite like a one-way airlock thing, but it's like a silicone lid that has like it almost looks like a little nipple on the top that has like an X cut into it, and so air can come out, and then it kind of closes itself. And those work okay.
It sounds like a sphincter, basically.
Yeah, basically. I think. Oh, and then I have like glass weights that you can put in the jar to help hold stuff under the water. Because when like the peppers are in the air, that's when they'll mold.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so the thing with the barrels was, so fermenting stuff and then putting it in barrels is like that's as old as like we've been fermenting stuff as a species, right? Like wine.
That's as old as barrels, basically.
Yeah, as old as barrels.
Whenever barrels, yeah.
Like wine, wine goes in barrels. Like beers go in barrels. Like liquor goes in barrels, and so like hot sauce also goes in barrels. Again, the biggest example of this is Tabasco. They get old barrels from Jack Daniels, and they. After Jack Daniels is done with the barrel, they'll take it, they'll like, put any repairs on it they need to so it doesn't leak, and they'll fill it with their fermented pepper mash, and then basically like have the barrel sitting vertically, cover the whole top in salt, so that way like anything that kind of leaks or whatever just gets like absorbed, and they put like a salt cap on it. They leave it for like some ridiculous time, like 4 years or something like that, before they're then turning it into a sauce.
Oh my God.
But so I bought, that's like a big 55-gallon barrel, which I do not have. I think mine's like 1.7 liters or something like that. So they're, maybe like probably about a foot long, maybe like a 6-inch diameter, maybe a little bit bigger at the thickest part.
Okay, like a mini keg, maybe.
Yeah, kind of like a little mini keg thing. But so I like, I was like, I want to try this. And I like, went and I did some research online, and there was like, found some guy talking about how he was just like, yep, like put my pepper mash right in the barrel, like fermented it, came out great. And I was like, cool, like I'm going to try this. So I got my hands on a bunch of Fresno peppers. I blended them up, made a pepper mash. I got using like a funnel, like, and it was a whole pane, but like got it into this tiny hole in the barrel, put the bung in to seal it, and then I had that sitting on my dresser for a couple days, and then I one morning went and looked, and there's like a little bit of water, like water and like little air bubbles coming out like by the bung, and I was like, that's weird, and I was like, oh, I wonder if it needs to be burped, and basically I like basically just touched it. Like I didn't even like pull it out. I like touched it, and that like dislodged it enough that it was so pressurized inside this barrel that it like the bung just, it was like in my hand, but it like, basically was like, and hot sauce exploded out of this barrel.
Oh God.
And it was like all over, like it was,
I was just saying the picture.
oh, yeah, Lauren just sent me the picture. I can send it to you afterwards if you want to like put it in the in the subject, the little body of the video or whatever. But there was pepper like all over the walls. But like
you were fine. Your eyes were fine. How are you? How are you? I don't care about the wall.
Yeah, well, so it got like directly into my eyeballs, like blasted me straight in the eyes.
Oh God.
And I'm standing there, and I was like, I can't see. Like, and I turned to Lauren. I was like, can you lead me to the bathroom? Like, I can't like open my eyes. She was like, hold on, I gotta take a picture. So yeah, this wonderful picture. But then like rinsed out my eyes, and like that hurt, and like come back here, and it looks like a murder scene because there's just like red
Oh my God.
pepper matter like all over the wall in the room. This is like 8 a.m, and so it's like,
oh my God,
before I've even had coffee, and I'm just like, oh man, like I am like just dying right now.
Was it at least a weekend? Like you had the day to deal with it, or?
Yeah, it was like a Saturday morning, I think.
Oh, good.
So I got like back in the shower and showered, and then spent like a while like Swiffered the walls, to like try and get the pepper down. And then it was like, like a week later, I'd be like on the other side of my room and move something, and it's like, oh, here's like some little pepper seeds and like a little bit of like pepper, like pepper skin. So yeah, I haven't tried the barrel again since. I actually have that pepper mash here. Let me grab it real quick.
Okay.
I don't know how well you can see.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so this is
it looks like beet juice.
Yeah, so this is like Fresno peppers.
It's very watery.
Yeah, so this one so the Fresno peppers, it's a really thick walled pepper, so there's a lot of water in there that helps.
Okay.
I also diluted it a little bit when putting it into the barrel to so there wouldn't be as much just like airspace because I didn't want there to like the whole oxygen and mold thing, right? And I was like, okay, if there's a little more water, that'll help. But I haven't done it.
That probably actually helped it aerosolize more.
Oh,
like just
probably,
spray out.
just like, yeah. But yeah, so that was abandoned the barrel project. There, I still want to do it, but I think what I will do probably is like ferment a sauce down to where it's like completely not fermenting anymore, and then put it in the barrel.
Okay.
And then like probably devise some sort of system where they're like, that way, like if it does explode, it is a little more self-contained.
Like have a little pepper corner where everything is kind of segregated in plastic.
Yeah, and I'll like get like a big box or something that I'll have upside down on it, and like that'll be like the blast shield.
How are you handling all of this? I never, like when you're cutting peppers, you use latex gloves or something?
Oh yeah. If I'm like cutting up like one jalapeno, I won't, but like for anything more than that, like I like have to do gloves. I feel like it only takes like touching your eye once with pepper hands before you're like, that's that's enough. I don't need to ever do that again.
Man, like how does touching your eye compare to the spray directly into your eyes? That was much worse, I'm guessing.
It's the spray is way worse. I think the force involved with the spray, definitely is a little bit of that, but
man, that's a great story. I'm sure everyone who does fermentation of some kind has some story, right? If not an explosion, but like things going horribly, horribly wrong.
Oh yeah, and like I know. I mean, it happens in people that like brew beer at home, right? And you bottle you bottle your beer, and then it's like, well, actually, you've made 24 little glass bombs that are gonna explode in your garage, right?
Yeah, I remember that scene from Breaking Bad where Hank's bottles start popping up on Schrader Bra. I forgot what the name was.
Yeah, exactly. And like I know people that have done that with their home brew, right? Like you're like keep it in their garage, and it's like, oh yeah, like 3 of them exploded last night. Like,
oh my God, it could explode while you're trying to drink it. That's so dangerous, right?
I mean, once you have the cap off, you're good. But like,
no, but that's what I mean. Like right before you're about to pop the cap.
Yeah, I mean, like, in theory, it could. Like, Hopefully not, but and with that, like there are things you can do. Like beer, it's easy because you can. There's a concept in beer called like original gravity and final gravity, which is basically like it's a measure of how much sugar and other stuff is dissolved in the water. And so like if your original gravity is really high, it means like, if you're going to ferment that all the way down, you're going to have like more alcohol. And like
Gotcha.
there's a formula you can use that based on the difference between your original and final to figure out how much of that sugar turned into alcohol and things. But with beer, like if your final gravity is not changing for like 3 days in a row, you're done fermenting. And so like you're not going to explode those bottles. But like if it's still dropping, like you've got active yeast in there that's like still making CO2 and doing stuff. And like that's when you're getting in the danger zone.
So I'm guessing like I've been to the Budweiser brewery in St. Louis, and they have like these giant tanks that can hold hundreds of thousands of gallons, or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they have like complicated valves and one-way valves and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
Most like, if you're, so I mean, like even the homebrew stuff, you have like a one-way water valve on the top, right? That's gonna let stuff out. On like once you're getting into actual like industrial level fermentation stuff, like most of those have like blow off valves and like kind of similar things that like hot water heaters have, where like if the pressure gets too high, like this little spigot's going to start draining something to keep you from making a big bomb.
Yeah, no, I have a pressure cooker that I use fairly often to cook red meat. And it comes with two valves. One is like the one that basically is just spinning, the top thing. And the other one is basically a safety valve. If the pressure goes 2x of what it's supposed to be max, that blows instead of the whole thing exploding.
Yeah, and then you get a nice little like steam, jet thing, but it's not like taking out your kitchen counter or something like that.
I think very few people describe steams of jet as like, that's a nice little jet.
Well, it's nice compared to what it could be.
Oh yes, it's nice. It's not pepper in my eyes. I think that story is so scary to me. So the point of the barrel is to get wood flavor into it.
Yeah. So it's so these are like toasted oak basically. So it's like American oak that someone is like heated with a fire, and it's not like not fully charred, but it's not like neutral oak is what. Okay. You call that, and so you get like wood flavor, and the when you like heat the wood and like kind of caramelize it like that, you're able to get some of there's actually like fats in wood that can kind of like seep out into it, and so like you can kind of see that in whiskey when you have like really old whiskeys and they're kind of like thicker and oilier, and like so that's some of that barrel coming in. And then also it's, you're getting like tannins from the oak, you're getting some sugars that have been kind of heated and brought out, and adding just kind of like that complexity. If you're using barrels that used to have whiskey in them or gin or whatever, like you'll get a little bit of that flavor too. I'm curious to try that on, with my little barrels, but it's all a function of like surface area and time, right? So when you have the big 55-gallon ones, like your surface area to volume ratio is you have a lot less surface area per gallon than you do in this little, like less than a half-gallon thing. So you gotta like change things up to avoid just making like a hot sauce that you're like, oh yeah, this tastes like bourbon, and that's not what you want.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But like it's the square versus volume, right? Like one is going up with like the cube, so it's definitely gonna have more. And have you tried actual like oaken or wooden hot sauces? Is that why you got into it? Like you bought some, it was really good.
Yeah, so I mean, like I mean, so I know I've had Tabasco, and so like that's one.
Right.
The reason specifically that I wanted to try it is there's a pizza place, which is probably my favorite pizza in the city, and they're also my favorite brewery in the city, but Cellar Maker House of Pizza. They sell a hot sauce that is the like original one, which is just like amazing. If you ever are in Bernal Heights for some reason and want pizza, like you should get a bottle of their hot sauce to go also, because it's just so good. But I started like talking to one of the guys behind the bar there, and he was like, oh yeah, like it's, fermented sauce with Fresnos and garlic, and then we put it in an old whiskey barrel for a couple months. And I was like, all right, like this seems like something that like, and then I was like, oh, how much do barrels cost? I bet they're really expensive. And it was like, oh, I can get like 2 of these little barrels for $40. Like, yeah, let's do it. And
You're taking notes as the guy's talking, like,
yeah, exactly.
Do you have to be super precise, like baking, like 2 teaspoons of this, 10 teaspoons of this, or it's more like cooking?
It's more like cooking. You have to be precise about like the salt content, basically. And so
Because
like
of the bacterial issue.
Right. Yeah. So that one you have to be precise on. And like usually even with that, like every time I do it, I always end up Googling. I'm like, is it 3.5%? Is it 4? Like, what? Right. And I like Google and I'm like, okay, right. And then I like bust out a scale and, do it. But like otherwise, it's kind of just like do whatever, like you throw in peppers, and like if you have 2 types of peppers, you're like, I don't know, let's try like 2/3 and 1/3, and then like 5 cloves of garlic, and I don't know, maybe half an onion, like just right. Like I think if you were trying to do it as like a business or like as a company, and you wanted to be able to put the same product on the shelves like consistently over time, then you would probably have a more precise process where you're measuring and you're regulating temperature while you're fermenting. And at that point, you probably have like a culture that you're inoculating with, rather than just like whatever is in the air on the peppers. But like, I don't know, I'm not there. Like I'm not going for preciseness.
So just like you can have a starter dough, basically, you can have a starter set for your peppers.
Yeah, and I'm sure like I'd be surprised if like Sriracha is another fermented hot sauce. Like I'd be surprised if they didn't have some sort of like basically starter culture that they've isolated and whatever, that they're not like inoculating with to, make sure that they get what they want.
Do you have ideas on why Sriracha is so popular? Like why that one sauce is so popular?
I think it's it's a good heat level for like a vast majority of the population, right? Where like it's spicy, but it's not too spicy, and it's also not spicy that like I still use it, right? Like it's not like I'm gonna try and be like, oh, lame. Like no, like it's right, like it's still good. And then it's like it's a little sweet, it's a little garlicky. Like I don't know, that kind of just like I think it's just it goes great with so many different foods that I think it's just easy to be like, yep, this is what I'm gonna get. And then like it's the red bottle with the green top, and it has the rooster on it, and like it so it has that kind of like self-identifying thing without any marketing.
My mouth is watering just thinking about Sriracha. I don't know, it's just so good. I'm not into hot sauces that much, right? Like I experienced them a little bit with you, and I only got into Sriracha recently, but it's the only hot sauce that I actually have bought, keep at home, and use regularly.
Nice. I mean, it's good, so nothing wrong with that.
Have you found these skills in sauce making to translate to not hot sauces? Do you make other kinds of sauces?
So I haven't made. So I've the only other kind of like sauce I've made is I made a fermented salsa base, which was it was like some lime juice and salt and a bunch of onion and peppers, and like fermented that for a while, and then and like I think there's like a ton of cilantro in there. So whether you will ever hate cilantro,
I love. I think I'm one of those people that actually gets the soapy flavor for cilantro, but I still love it. I still love it. It's so good. I ate it since I've been a kid, like since 2 or 3, because Indian cooking, it's like you sprinkle it on top of everything. Like once you've made the curry, you sprinkle it on top. So I'm just used to that being the cilantro flavors. It's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, so like, fermented that, and then like a half cup of that combined with like a couple diced tomatoes, and you like, let that sit and stir up, and then like, it's like a nice salsa. Tomatoes, when they ferment, they fermenting is a controlled rot, basically, right? But
that's not a great way to sell it.
Yeah, it's a great controlled rot hot sauce. But like tomatoes, when you ferment them, they like the texture gets all weird, and they start to like even though it is the good rot, like it just almost takes on like a bad rot flavor, right? And so like you don't use that for the like in the the fermented base. But so I've done that.
Okay.
Made like jardinera with Lauren.
What is that?
So it's like if you've had like an Italian sub, and there's the you traditionally it's pickled, not fermented, but it's like got some cauliflower and celery and carrot and like maybe a little bit of pepper and some onion. It's kind of like a little chunks of that stuff, and you'll put it on. And it's kind of like a tangy thing. So we did a fermented version of that, because you're still just getting the acid in there, and those are all things that like stay pretty crispy when you ferment them. So that was good. We made a thing called yuzu koshu, which is a Japanese like condiment, I guess is what you'd call it. But it's the actual one uses the yuzu fruit, which I couldn't find here. So I like faked yuzu by getting like oranges and lemons and grapefruit, and it's kind of like winging it. But that like, you use the just the rind. So I grated the rind off of that, and then some like little serrano peppers, and chopped those up really finely, and salt, and then like fermented that. And it's basically like a paste. And like put that on, made like fish tacos, and put that in like the coleslaw, and like that was great, and things like that. It's like that. That's another one. I'm trying to think of like what other stuff
I feel like pickling should be involved. Like you're in the area.
I know, and like I love pickles too. Like I think like I don't know, maybe that's like the next one I mess around in for a little bit, is like making my own pickles or something.
I got these butter chip pickles or something from Mount Olive, and they're just, dude, I didn't imagine, because I come from a place where pickles have a very specific meaning. Like I don't know if you have Indian pickle, but it's like in oil. It's kind of very spicy. It's very sour. These are almost sweet. It's like, and buttery. I didn't even like a Chardonnay.
I always the Indian and kind of like Pakistani pickles, like those. I remember like threw me so off for a long time, because I would have it and I'd just be like this is so different than what my brain was detecting when it said pickled whatever, right?
It's more, I think the way I describe it more accurately is probably like spiced and oiled. That's what it is. But that's how we do pickling. Generally, everybody's grandma back home has their own recipe for pickling, and like once a year you'll get like a jar or something of like grandma's pickles, because it takes about a year or six months.
Okay.
We don't use vinegar that much, basically.
Interesting. Then I wonder. I'm gonna go look it up after this, but I wonder if it's actually like fermenting, and that's how you're getting kind of the like little bit of acid in there.
Oh, it's totally possible, because if you open up the pickle too early, it's like a total different flavor.
Okay.
Like it still tastes like raw fruit, right? Like if you put in mangoes and carrots and whatnot, so they still have the taste of their own self. It's like, this is just like slightly more stale carrot. But when the pickle is ready, it tastes like the oil and the spices.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because like fermenting, food like fruits and peppers or spices and things is like, that's one of those like really, really old school like ways of preserving things that like different cultures have done slightly differently with different ingredients forever, right? It's a way to kind of preserve some stuff, because you're basically just getting it in acid.
Have you fermented more interesting things like meat? I'm thinking, have you fermented meat or kimchi? Have you made like fermented cabbage?
I haven't. I want to do kimchi. The only reason I like didn't go do kimchi is I read that like it gives off a pretty pungent smell when it's fermenting, and like for the most part, like my fermentation station is like my dresser in my room. So like there's. I'm a little sensitive to the like if it's going to be real pungent, I do have to live with it. But like no, I want to do kimchi, and like I want to do sauerkraut. Meat, I think I probably wouldn't do meat just because I'm not super confident in like my ability to keep that from going bad.
Right.
Like people do like ferment meat, and like a like the one that I'd be curious to try, which is like less of a fermented, or less straight up fermented, but still kind of like a, you know, you're getting a yeast involved in it.
Mhm.
Is there's this thing called koji, which is a it's basically like inoculated rice that, you know, the Japanese use in all kinds of things, and it goes
Okay.
into like you know, it'll go into like miso when you're starting like to ferment miso.
Oh, gotcha.
You know, it's used in sake, you know, like things like that. So like it's used in a ton of things. And I've watched a video about basically curing steaks in koji for like
Mhm.
you know, 3 days or whatever, and then grilling it. And so like that like seems more achievable. Basically, like I think that's you know, you're still keeping it cool. Like you're not leaving it out at room temperature and doing that, but it's like you're still kind of letting that do a little bit of its work on it. So yeah, if I was going to do it, I would
Basically,
go more that route.
it's kind of like a more extended marination.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see. I guess you probably do marinate meat though. Probably off topic, but I would be interested in what your marination for fried chicken is, because I've been trying to get my fried chicken like just perfect at home,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I'm getting close. I'm trying to get to. It's gonna sound so cheap. I'm trying to get to the same flavor as Popeyes, because I love Popeyes.
Okay.
But when I eat Popeyes, I feel terrible. So I want the taste, but I don't want the feeling of feeling terrible. Yeah.
So if you said Chick-fil-A, like I know how Chick-fil-A marinates their chicken.
How is it?
They use a pickle brine, so it's like
Mm.
probably not. It's not only pickle juice, if I had to guess, but it's like, you know, a large percentage of it is like pickle juice that they're letting the chicken hang out in for a while. The last time I did fried chicken, which like we were intentionally trying to make spicy fried chicken, because Lauren and I for a while were like going through every spicy fried chicken place that's on like delivery apps right now. I'm trying to figure out the best one. But so we did, it was like a large portion buttermilk, and then also had, I think it still had some pickle juice in it, and then like a good amount of like crystal hot sauce, and then kind of like a spice blend that was like onion powder and garlic powder and, you know, paprika and whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was the marinade for that. And like those came out good. Like they were, you know, was very happy with it. But
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Like the buttermilk, paprika, onion, garlic powder. That
Yeah.
exactly. That's the mix. I just haven't done pickle juice or brine. I read some recipes about brining, but I was like, dude, I don't want to make brine.
yeah.
Maybe if
Yeah,
I could just buy brine or something.
Yeah. The other you know, marinated or like cured meat thing that I did was I was too late for St. Patrick's Day, because I was waiting on Amazon delivery of random stuff. But I made my own corned beef.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so you know, bought like a big ol' like 5-pound brisket from the store,
Mhm.
and then you keep it submerged in the brine. Is basically it's you know, water, and then it has salt, and it has Prague salt, which is like the salt with I'm gonna like totally butcher it's like sodium nitrate, right? It's either
Okay.
nitrate or whichever one is like bad if you actually eat it. But like over time it breaks down, and it is like, you know, very strongly antibacterial.
Okay.
That's like why you can leave this like, you know, big piece of beef in water in your fridge for a while. Like, you know, like bay leaves and pickling spice and all that stuff, and then you simmer it for a couple hours after a week of brining this thing. And that was
Have you ever had nihari?
you say nihari?
Nihari, yeah, it's like a Pakistani dish
Never.
made with beef and beef bones and beef bone broth. You basically simmer it overnight. So you don't marinate or anything for a while, but you simmer it overnight till the meat is absolutely breaking down. I'll send you a recipe. It's my favorite dish from Pakistan.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, interested to try that. The other like overnight simmering one I want to do is to make my own ramen broth. And that's like
Oh, that sounds good.
you know, simmer pork bones for like 18 hours or something like that. It's
I hope you don't have carpet.
no, it's all hard. Like tile in the kitchen. But
because that smell absorbs into carpet like crazy.
yeah, I bet. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Oh no, my last apartment had carpet, and when we cooked nihari last time, the apartment smelled like nihari for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Um, all right, I feel like we've covered a lot of the bases. What do you think we didn't bring up?
I think like one other thing that I think is interesting is kind of the like, the chase of like the world's hottest pepper,
Yes,
right?
Pepper X.
Pepper X, yeah. Well, it's so crazy because if you go back to like, the year 2000, according to like Guinness World Records, the like hottest pepper in the world was the habanero.
What?
Which yeah, that's the correct. It's like when I read that, I was like, what? And like, there's a big caveat they put on it where they're like, oh, like this isn't the hottest, but it's like the hottest confirmed and tested, right?
Right, but still.
Yeah, it's like still it's crazy. And then like the red Savina habanero, just like a normal habanero is in like the 300-ish thousand Scoville unit. The red Savina can get up to like 500,000, right? And so that was like the hottest for like, even longer after that. And then like, presumably like just more stuff got tested and that was the new whatever. But now like there aren't, I guess it's really unlikely that there's any naturally occurring peppers that are ever going to break the record.
Of course.
I think, even the Carolina Reaper was a guy like, cloning and breeding and crossing pepper plants and taking the hottest, the plants that grew the hottest peppers and then crossing those ones and like, things like that to get this thing. And it doesn't count as being a pepper until you can grow 10 generations of the same plant without like any outside, crossing or anything. So like that's basically when it's like it's stable. Is that you can, take a Carolina Reaper and another Carolina Reaper and get a Carolina Reaper out of it, and it's still as hot. So like it's, you can make a one-off pepper that is like way hotter maybe, but like if that plant is sterile and it can't, make more plants, like it doesn't count.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it's like Pepper X right now is still, I think, unconfirmed because I don't know if they've hit that 10 generation thing yet because it's it's only been like a couple years. And like basically if you had a greenhouse and you could like grow them back to back, like you're still looking at like, I don't know, 3-month whatever growing cycle, right? And like doing 10 of those, like that's a long time. So like that's, and you have like all kinds of people basically that are like trying to, grow this world's hottest pepper. And like sometimes they're, now like they're partnered with like a, either like a fertilizer company or like some like, lab that's producing like, natural oils that'll help your plants grow. Like, something like that, right? Where they're like, oh, our soil blend is going to help you grow the best pepper. And so like there's like like now it's almost like these there's like real science involved of like chasing this like hottest pepper, which is just like it's kind of funny to me because it's like obviously Pepper X has presumably that guy is getting some money off the hot ones deal, but like I don't know, like did the guy that came up with the Carolina Reaper, like did he like was it like a passion project for him? Like how much time went into that? Like it's like that just like whole world kind of blows my mind of doing that. And then like, getting them tested too, like the original way you determine the Scoville like heat unit rating was you would take some of the pepper and create, an oil or whatever, right? You would have there's some standard thing of like X grams of pepper and whatever.
Sure.
And then what you would do is you would try it and you'd go, yep, that's hot. And you would take your whatever that mixture was and you would dilute it like basically to 50% with like a sugar syrup. And you would try it again and you'd go, oh, that's still hot. and then you would dilute that again 50%. So each time, you're getting like you're having the amount of pepper in it, basically.
Wait, by homeopathy rules, shouldn't it get more spicy?
Yeah. But yeah, so you would do that until your panel of judges all said like this is no longer hot,
Gotcha.
and that's what it used to be. And now with like you get like a fluid chromatography lab to like you pay them however much money to like do a bunch of science on your peppers and come back and give you like a concentration of the capsaicin in the overall thing, and then like that translates to a number. So like now there's like now it's real, and it's less of just like, well, Greg had to add sugar syrup 6 times.
I think whenever something becomes a competition and there's winning and losing, you need better measures, right? So I'm guessing there's like Pepper Olympics or something like where people show up with all their own peppers and they have certified reports from this lab. Like, look, my pepper is the hottest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like that whole world is just like pretty crazy to me.
Is that a next step for you? Not breeding peppers, but like going to a place where a bunch of people have brought their own hot sauce and like kind of talking shop with them?
I think that would be like, that'd be cool to like the equivalent of like a homebrewers club, but for hot sauce.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be neat, like, to just go
a community.
Like try things. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I think I would need to get a little better at making hot sauce maybe, but like that. I mean, yeah, I think that'd just be fun to just like I don't know, see more of like what people are trying and doing and what's worked for people and not worked, and like do that, because the online community is like, it exists, but it's not super active, right? Or at least like from what I've found, it's not super active, and there's more newbies asking questions than people who have like done it a fair amount, being like, oh, I'm experimenting with this, like so I think that'd be interesting.
Also, I think for a hobby like this, you can only engage academically, right? Like if we play video games and we have an online community, we can actually play the game together. But with this, like, I want to taste your sauce. I want to like see your method. I want to meet you in person and see how it goes. Like, I want to look at the peppers.
Yeah. It's a little different, and like I don't know. It's also like you can play video games every night of the week if you want, right? Like a week later, someone who's making hot sauce, like nothing might have changed.
That's true. You probably want to meet as a club more infrequently. Than a chess club or something.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I guess that was a really good chat. David, I generally let people, I ask 2 questions always to end with, and one of them is always like, what did we not bring up? And what are your parting thoughts? So we can revisit that again. What did we not bring up?
Yeah, well, the only other thing that I always think is really interesting is so I guess it's more of a question for you, but when you think of like cultures or cuisines or whatever where spicy peppers are like a big part of it, like what places do you think of?
I mean, I think of South Asia, of course, because I'm from there. But I think of it based on the foods I've had. So Mexican food, I think, of course, because of jalapenos. And it's gonna sound funny, but like wasabi makes me think of similar reason. Even though Japanese food is not spicy at all.
Yeah.
But the fact that you have that little ball of wasabi sitting there, you can change your whole life and like make it very spicy if you want. What else? I mean, Italian is funny because by itself, Italian is never spicy. But again, there's always like a big shaker of pepper sitting right there. And I personally discover it. Like I put a lot of pepper on my pizza.
Yeah.
Because I just like it that way. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is, where peppers originally grew were like, Mexico, Central America, South America.
Okay.
And what people speculate the first European person to come across peppers would have been Christopher Columbus when he got to the Caribbean.
Sure.
So that's like, late 15th century. And then that like peppers weren't introduced into like Southeast Asia and like the Indian subcontinent until like the 1500s by the Portuguese.
Oh,
like, in their
wow.
trading, right? And so it's like you think of like like Thai food as being this like it's such, like right, and it's like it's only, I mean, to be fair, 500 years is a long time, but like it's a relatively new like introduction into that cuisine.
Yeah.
Which
Like
is
what
like,
were we? I'm like, what were Indian people eating 500 years ago then?
yeah, it's like it's so like I don't know, just that like it's just kind of fascinating to me, and like it's kind of funny you bring up the Italian thing too, because it's like a similar thing with Italian cuisine and tomatoes. I don't remember the actual year on that, but it's like tomatoes aren't native to Italy.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, they're not. Right? Like they grow great.
They're in everything. They're in everything.
It's in everything, right? And it's like, but yeah, they're not native there, and so it's like that is another one where it's just like, huh, like that's such a like such an integral part of the cuisine. Like how did this happen? Like I don't know that like I don't really have much more commentary on that, but like that was one that I just always think is like so fascinating. Of that like it'd be interesting to read like I don't know a paper or like if someone does like a investigative book or something of like those kind of shifts in cuisine of like I guess it's like the globalization of food, but like on a much slower time scale than it happens now, where you have like Indian Mexican fusion food trucks, right? Like it's that's just a faster, more extreme version of like introducing peppers to Southeast Asia.
I mean, it is, now that you mentioned that, it does make me think of something that I have as a recurrent thought, like an infrequent thought, that there are certain cuisines, certain countries that have quote unquote one. Like there are certain countries that their food is popular the world over.
Mm-hmm.
Like people, sorry to put a particular country on spot, but people aren't saying I love UK food. Like there's no, and that's generally like a stereotype people like to beat up on, like UK food is bland or whatever. But I wonder why that is. Like just certain cultures have found mixtures of ingredients that everybody likes.
Yeah, which is like that is really interesting, and like I think it's also interesting too when those things are so different actually in different places. Like if you take Indian food for example, like it's really different here from India. And like I would be willing to bet that like UK version of Indian food is different than the US version and the like Indian version, right? And so like it spans like a huge portion of the globe, but there's like all these different little regional like changes and versions and things, and like I don't know, it's all like really interesting to be like kind of globalization of like cuisines and kind of like how it changes from the original and things like that.
It's so funny to me because America has exported so much of its culture, movies, music, and just like clothing.
Mm-hmm.
But food is one thing that it has imported basically, like wholesale.
Yeah.
Maybe other than fast food. Like fast food is something America has exported for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say like other than, I was going to say have we exported like burgers and hot dogs, but McDonald's is like everywhere. So I guess we have, but
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the US, I guess, if I had to think of it as from like a foreign travel perspective, would maybe be a food destination if you were like, I want to go to like the nicest, best restaurants, right? You're like, yeah, I want to go to, this whatever Michelin star place in New York City from that aspect, maybe. But like, I don't know, like when you think of like iconic San Francisco dishes, you have like, bread bowls, Shapiro, and then like maybe the street hot dogs wrapped in bacon, right? Like those are all great, but like none of those are things that people are like clamoring to get here and try. Maybe the sourdough bread bowl, just because it's kind of whatever. But like there isn't a like big travel draw cuisine that you're like, getting people to come here for, right?
There's a question I've asked to my American friends before, which kind of stumps a lot of people, which is if you were to pick one food, like I said, nihari, right? Nihari is a quintessential Pakistani food. I could represent so much of my cuisine with that. What would you pick as the one quintessential American food?
Oh man. I mean, like on the one hand, I think fast food just like from like if you like want to think about it from like a cultural perspective too, like it just gets it, right? It's the like it's quick, you don't even like leave your car, your food is ready like instantly. it's terrible for you and like 50% corn syrup, like, it's like from that aspect, like probably that. But like the other thing I could think of would maybe be like barbecue. I know like
Yes.
everything has every like culture and cuisine has its own kind of version of like a barbecue type thing or like something like it. But like I think of American barbecue of like, smoking ribs and stuff like that is, as far as I know, is like kind of like unique to America. And there's like different
hmm
variants on it of, Texas style or Kansas City style or,
hmm
Tennessee style barbecue. So like I think that would be another one.
No, I think that's a good pick, and all the sauces that come with them.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that was one of my favorite parts about actually going to St. Louis. Was my friend took us to this sort of like barbecue shack. It was like actually looked like a shack
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere. Everybody there was super super like rural, and everybody was white. And I was the only one who was like an immigrant in any sense of the word. And the food was so good. The Brussels sprouts were. I've never had Brussels sprouts that amazing than at that place.
Like probably cooked in fat from the meat, which is like the best way to cook them.
They were dripping with the tray they came in was, you know how oil leaves like a little bit of a stain on cardboard?
Yeah.
The whole tray was already like there was no dry spot left.
Yeah. That's like there's something to be said about like those places where you walk in and like the menu is the boards with like the individual letters, right? And like, the spacing's all off on the prices
Yep.
and things, and it's just like, but the food's gonna be so good.
Dude, and incredibly cheap. Like I think for
Yeah.
about $20, we fed like three grown up men with a bunch of meat, like two trays of meat.
Yeah.
Just eat as much as you want.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to do that now.
You should definitely go to that city for like specific. I don't know if you've been.
I have not.
I haven't been to many parts of America personally, but that's the only place I've ever tried barbecue, and it just blew my mind. It was so so good.
Well, someday that will probably get on the list. There's a couple breweries in Seattle that are all like ranked in like top 10 breweries in the world right now. That
Oh wow, in the world.
yeah, one is like the big one is called Side Project, and I think they're like, I mean, it's like according to whatever Beer Advocate. So like I'm sure you're gonna talk to a different person or different website and you get a different answer, but I mean, just like the stuff that I've had has been fantastic, and obviously it's hard to get out here because they're in St. Louis and that's far away.
They don't. I mean, I'm guessing they don't ship and stuff.
They don't ship directly because there's like the 3-tier system for alcohol, which came out of Prohibition. But basically, where like manufacturers, distributors, and retailers all have to be independent, which kind of like can hurt the actual like brewery basically if your
Okay.
distributor doesn't want to play ball with you, and like it has a whole bunch of problems. But like a lot of that then, because each state has slightly different rules, they like can't ship out of state and stuff like that.
Oh, I
So
see.
you're dependent on like whatever retailer happens to get it that may or may not supply a random bottle shop in San Francisco, right? Like that's the system.
Yeah, I think I still sometimes forget the fact that America is like it is a federation, like a bunch of different sort of like states together, and you can literally step across state lines and change your reality. Like your laws are all different now.
Yeah, is maybe good and bad. I think there's a lot more people have said smarter things about that than I will.
I mean, I like it. I think it's a good way to do incubation of ideas. You're gonna have some states that are struggling, but that also means you're gonna have some states that are really exceeding with like good ideas.
Yeah, and I think in an ideal world, those ideas would like flow around and whatever. I don't know
well,
if
yes.
it actually happen.
Yeah, that part we're still working on, I think. Any parting thoughts, David? This was so wonderful, by the way. Thank you so much for doing this.
This was a lot of fun. No, I don't know. I don't think I don't have any big parting thoughts. I think I'm gonna go eat some homemade bagels. So that's like some my sourdough starter in there. So that's got some fermentation. I have leftover food from Little Deli that I'm gonna eat after that, and that's nice and spicy. So
Oh,
just like,
that's so good.
yeah, I'm like, living this podcast out in real life after this. That's my parting thought.
You know what? Let's end on this. What is a good starter super hot sauce for people who've never tried one to get it to buy? What is the one that you recommend?
So okay, so I absolutely love it's, oh god, I think it's Mountain View Firefighters. Palo
Okay.
Alto, sorry, Lauren's correcting me back there. Palo Alto Firefighters. They make they have a couple different sauces. They're like all great. Their habanero one is just like, it's so good. So like that's a great one, especially for people in the Bay Area. Like it is actually like the firefighters that, I know they made it originally. I don't know if they still make it, but presumably some portion of profits goes to them, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
And then it's like that one's really good. And then I'll just plug the Cellar Maker House of Pizza hot sauce. Like that's just if you want to try like a fermented barrel aged hot sauce that's like gonna be really good, like that's a great place to go do it. Go get their pizza, have some beer, leave with a bottle of hot sauce. What more can you ask for?
I think that's a perfect point to end on.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
wonderful. And I'll let you know when the episode is out.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your Sunday, David.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Awesome.
Goodbye.
Yeah, see ya.